Hey, welcome everybody. This is Jeff Colson with Junior Hockey Advisor. Sunday night, time to talk hockey. We got a lot to talk about. Going to try some new things. We've got a lot of new items, a lot of new technology. Like I tell you every week, we keep improving, we keep adding things. So new camera tonight. We've got a new computer tonight. We've got a new hardwired system in tonight. Let's see how it works. Let's see if it's worth all the time and effort. But tonight, we've got a lot to cover. We're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the North American Hockey League and their upcoming draft. We've got some viewer mail. We've got some breaking news. But I got to tell you a little bit about the fishing trip because I told you I would. So we went fishing, and I think I've got a couple pictures here. Hopefully I've got a couple that I can pop up for you. There's my son, and that's the one he caught, and that's my daughter. That's about as far as I'm going to take it. But we had a great time. We caught a lot of fish. We were right off, about 8-10 miles off the shore of Rochester. You could see Rochester in the skyline. But we've been doing day trips, and day trips have been the norm all summer long. We haven't been doing any major vacations. So this was one of the day trips. Went out for a little fishing excursion. So that's it. There's the fish. So now you've seen them. All right, so let's get to some breaking news.
The BCHL has said all along, without fans, they don't have a season. So they are hoping by the time December 1st comes along, the province will have a strong enough handle on COVID-19 to allow gatherings of more than 50 people. They are hoping to start with 25% capacity at their rinks when the games begin.
We don't know how this virus is going to act in the fall flu season. And so what we wanted to do is give it time and push our season back to make sure that if there is some sort of second wave that we see it coming and don't actually get in the middle of it.
If they can start December 1st, the BCHL plans on a 46-game schedule, down about a dozen games from a typical regular season. The playoffs will conclude in May. Until then, all teams have the option of running training camps, practices, and skill development for the 3 months leading up to puck drop in December. And for the most part, everyone can't wait to get going. It has been a long break.
We're kind of just chomping at the bit. Like I'm sure a lot of our people in the community, they're probably excited for hockey to start, and we're there. We're close to having a season start date, so we're just kind of getting everyone in here, getting them all trained up, and then hopefully we can start the season.
The BCHL is still having conversations with the province, looking for financial support to help keep the 20 franchises viable. A season without any hockey would be devastating, but the league has worked diligently to find a solution.
You know, we're a very optimistic group. We've had a task force together since March when we shut it down, and all we're trying to do is problem solve, and that's going to be our process going forward. We just don't know what's around the corner. But at least we have some clarity for the players and their parents as to what we're trying to accomplish.
I want to thank TSN for that. That's part of their news broadcast. What does this mean? What does this mean for hockey? The BCHL is on. Okay, that's great news. Yes, it's going to be 12 games short. But, in the climate that we're in right now, the fact that they say game on is huge. Why is that huge? Well, first of all, they're one of the big three: USHL, North American Hockey League, BCHL, and they're of the big three. They're the Canadian component. It goes a little bit deeper than that. That's the leading edge of the whole CJHL. If the BCHL says they're in, there's a good chance that that'll help persuade the rest of the crew, meaning the other 9 leagues, to jump on too. So I think it's great news. I think it's extremely good news. Hey, do we want it to start in September, October? Absolutely. Do we want to see a 60-game schedule? Absolutely. But I'll take what I can get right now as far as getting 46 games in. And if that means by them sticking their neck out a little bit ahead of the pack, and because they're one of the big boys, if one of the big boys is stepping up and saying this is the way it's going, I think that's great news. And I'm hoping we get the same news that comes out from the USHL and the North American Hockey League. Put some schedules out, put some things down, let us know when your showcases are. Let's get all this stuff going, because I think that will help everybody down line jump on board and be saying the right things about moving forward with hockey. So great news coming out of the BCHL. We also got some great news. For those of you that don't know, we have a new Division I team that's starting 1 year from September. A new Division I team. So that's 2 new Division I teams in 1 year. St. Thomas out of Minnesota, they were a Division III program. Now, the interesting thing about this, and what makes this a little bit different than most, is St. Thomas, the whole campus, the whole university is elevating all their sports to Division I. And what does that mean? This is unprecedented inside of Division I sports in general. Normally, it's a very, very long process, and you go to Division II. Now hockey, we really don't worry about Division II because the Division II teams participate at the Division I level. However, with that said, we have to be looking at this and going, this could be great news. Maybe it's going to break through and let some other schools bypass and jump right up to D1 and bring all their sports up. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. We need more Division I teams. We have the ability to get some teams that are well funded, good sized schools. There's no reason for them not to be playing Division I if they can. Better for the athletes. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of Division III hockey. I'm not talking about replacing Division III hockey. I'm saying we should be getting there should be more D3 teams too. There's no doubt about it. I think there should be more D3 hockey. There should be more hockey in general across the board. And that's coming. This is great news. So welcome aboard, St. Thomas. Glad to see you on board. And I'm ready to start talking about some NAHL draft. What about you? All right, let's get into the NAHL draft. I think the discussion is going to be interesting. This is what's really fun about this tonight is this is a big part of our masterclass, and I've taken a small section of a discussion about the North American Hockey League and broken it down a little bit so we can use it tonight. You can get a little taste of what the master class is about. And the master class is for people that are looking to be in the industry, working as a professional in the industry, as an advisor, as an assistant coach, assistant GM, any kind of entry-level job, and maybe more. There are people that are in the class right now that are already in the industry that are looking to elevate themselves up. Got a class starting in August. This wasn't meant to be a promo for the class, but you can get an idea about it too. Hey, if you're out there, tell me where you're from. We're using a new service called eCam tonight, and we're using eCam along with a new service provider. They may have a little button on the feed that you're looking at for you to participate in conversation. Now, I can see your conversations coming over Facebook, but since we're pushing out to much more than just Facebook tonight, if you hit the little button, I think it'll acknowledge and let you jump on so that you can actually be a user and actually jump on and talk. So if you're out there and you want to talk, just click on the little button on there. I think it says something like Facebook user, and then you can actually interact a little bit more, and maybe I can read some questions or get some feedback for you. So I see a few of you already jumping on and doing that. I appreciate that. That's really cool. And we've got Topeka coming in. We got Potsdam coming in. We got Arizona coming in. Now it's turning into a show again. We've got Riverside, California. We've got Georgia, Flint, Michigan. Hey, hometown. Gotta love it. I see a relative popping up there, here and there. Okay, great. Crowds building as we're going on tonight. I'm very impressed with how loyal some of you have been to the show, either watching it live or watching it in replay. I don't know if any of you are paying attention, but our reach now is well over 10. We've pushed the reach up to 15,000 in some of these broadcasts. Our actual viewership is over 1,000 now. And we're getting into the realm of actually being a legitimate show. And I appreciate that. I'm not saying that we're not legitimate. I'm just saying our numbers are starting to legitimize it at a different level. Welcome, Rockford, Illinois. Welcome, Syracuse. Welcome, New Jersey. Great to see all of you on board. So let's talk about the NAHL. Let's talk about the NAHL draft. Please, if you see something you don't like, if you see something that you don't understand, throw me a comment. I'll be glad to either speed up or slow down. I don't want to put anybody to sleep, nor do I want to talk above anybody's heads when it comes to the analytics side. I love this stuff, and I just don't want to. I want to do it so it's fun for everybody, not just me. All right, so normal draft for the North American Hockey League is in June, not this year. This year it's this upcoming week. So we're going to see the draft this week. They did a preliminary draft of just 3 rounds a few weeks ago. That was all COVID related. Now we've got a situation we're in a situation now where the second part of the draft's coming around. That's more of the legitimate side of the draft. And let's get going. Here's how the timeline works on this. The timelines are players are tendered during the season sometime, and there's a set date on that. I think it's got to be after November, December when a player can be tendered. Who's normally tendered? We'll get into that in a little bit. Veterans are assessed. So all last season, veterans are being assessed. And some of it's formal and some of it's informal. Some of it's with the conversations with the coaching staff. Some of it's just the coaches going, hey, we've got to have this kid back next year. Or sometimes coaches say, we're not going to invite this kid back next year. They know well in advance they're not going to invite a kid back. Can happen either way. With that said, that's just part of it, assessing the veterans. Then we get into the pre-draft skates. You get into the showcases. You get into the actual any kind of draft skate. Now, the pre-draft skates that have been going on for the last 3 or 4 weeks. This year is an off year. It's a weird year. So a lot of things I'm saying fit for the regular season. They may not have fit perfectly for this year. The way the pre-drafts are supposed to work is the pre-drafts are usually done by the league and by individual teams and by groups of teams. In other words, you might find an individual team that does a pre-draft that says, hey, look, I'm just going to pick up a name because I saw it coming across the screen, Topeka. Topeka says, hey, we're going to do a pre-draft skate. And they might do it anywhere in the nation. They might do it in Chicago. They might do it in Flint. They can always do it somewhere, and they do it in markets they think they're going to get good response from. They get out and see players. They can also have a league pre-draft, and the league is for every team to skate with, and they also do that in numerous cities, and I think they just finished those up last week. Then you've got the combined teams, 1 team, 2 teams, 3 teams, 4 teams. They pick a city, they pick an area, and they do a pre-draft together. In all situations, you're getting in front of a group of coaches, you're getting yourself seen. Okay, then the draft comes along. So before we get into the actual draft, let's just talk about how the draft is executed. Let's just finish off the timeline. Then from there, you go into main camp. That's where the veteran players that are asked to return. You've got your tenders. We'll talk about tenders in a second. We've got our draft picks, and then we've got any kind of free agents. And free agents come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. That gets you down to your 30-man roster. When you leave the main camp, a team is at 30. Now, there are some teams that will go 32, 34. Usually not, though. A good coach has got his mind set up on 30 because he's still got to reduce down. You get into September, and then you've got another deadline you've got to hit to get your roster down at the Tier 1 level, USHL, and the Tier 2 level, the North American Hockey League. You've got to get down to 23 players. So the roster reduces down to 23 at that point. And then after that, you trim the rosters, then you're good to go. Now, that time frame when there's 30 players hanging around, you've got people in the stands. Not everybody's in the lineup because there's a lot of guys around. That's when you start seeing some jockeying. You might get a player that decides on his own to ask for a release. You might get a trade. You might get all kinds of situations going on there. So with that, let's talk a little bit more about the actual draft itself. Let's see, what league were they in? I don't have that in front of me about what league the St. Thomas team was in, but if you jump onto USCHO.com, jump into Minnesota MIAC, I think it is. It starts with an M, the league that starts with an M, and they were in that league. You can find that right on USHO under the D3 teams. Pretty easy to navigate. You should be able to get there pretty easily. Anthony, good question, though. I appreciate you asking that. Let's talk a little bit about the actual draft itself. 16 rounds. It's held virtually. It's in inverse order of how you finished. So if I finished in first, I'm going to draft last. It's kind of like some of the pro leagues. They do the same thing. Now, any new franchises that come on board, they get to the head of the line, and then from there, you can actually figure out the rest of the order. Now, the only thing that changes this is these are commodities. Draft picks can be traded. Tenders can be traded. Players can be traded. So I could have a really good player, and trade him for several draft picks for the next year if I wanted to do that. Now, the North American Hockey League draft picks have a different level of monetization than the USHL, just like they have a different level of monetization than a Tier 3 organization. A draft pick follows, and we'll go through the equation right now, but it follows in an order of the actual tender process. So you've got vendors. You've got veterans on your team that are returning. Then you have your tender class coming in. Now, what a tender is it's a contract between the team and the player. A tender says, hey, look, if you're going to play in the North American Hockey League, you're going to play for us. And if you're going to play, you're going to play here, okay? And if you don't play here, you can play in any other league. That doesn't matter. It's only binding for that league. And the player's saying, if I'm going to play in that league, I'm going to play for you. The team says, if you're going to play in the league, you're going to play for us. So a tender gets you into the main camp. Okay, it is not a guarantee you're going to make the 30-man roster. It's not a guarantee you're going to make the fall roster. It's not uncommon, when you see the numbers of tenders, it's not uncommon for a tender or two to get cut. It's just not uncommon. So if you get a tender situation and you relax and you fall back a little bit, it's not the time to be falling back. It's the time to be going forward and working harder, because there's going to be a lot of people gunning for that spot. So you got veterans, tenders, then the draft comes in after that. So technically, and when you see the numbers, you'll see why, when you get drafted, even if you're a first-round draft pick, you're actually falling in behind the tender group. So your tender group, some would consider, and a lot of people do consider, that tender group to be your first-round draft picks. So how do you figure that out? Well, everything is built off a list. So it's your protected minus, and it starts at 30 minus your protected list. So we got a little example. So if your club, if you're veterans and your tenders, now every team starts off with, I believe they're still the same. It could change, and I could be off on my information because I don't sit up every night and read every bylaw change, and I don't know if there's any change. But I'm going off of the information of 10 tenders per team. If you're at 10 tenders per team, every team is allocated 10 tenders, and you have, in this example right here, you have your veterans and your tenders equal 22. So if you've got 22 total players that are either veterans or tenders, you minus that from 30, and that's how many draft rounds you get to participate in. So if you've got one veteran coming back and you've got 10 tenders, you have 11, you take that and minus, you'll go through all the rounds and you'll still have to find other players. This is assuming that every team's going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 veteran players coming back at minimum. The example I gave you is pretty common. If you get your 10 tenders and you've got 6, 8, 10, 12 veterans coming back, you're going to participate in the rest. So once again, in this example, the veterans and the tenders equal 22. So 30 is your protected number. Minus the 22 means you've got 8 rounds of participation in the draft. So you just build off of 30. If you've got 5 veterans coming back and let's say you've got 15 veterans coming back and you've got 10 tenders, that's 25. It doesn't matter if that tender says yes or no. If you signed a tender contract, it counts, okay? So if that tender later decides to change his mind, that doesn't matter. You don't get one back, even if he does it the day before the draft. Your tender is signed, you used it. It's use it or lose it before the draft. And then after that, so you've got, in the example I gave you, you've got 25, minus that from 30, and then you've got your 5 draft rounds you would participate in, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, well, thank you for telling me the setup looks good. I'm glad to hear that. We've been trying hard to get it to work the right way. So let's go to the other side. Now, last year, the draft, who gets drafted? This is a question. In fact, I had a lot of questions coming in today earlier. Had a lot of DMs coming in, especially from younger parents, from players of younger parents. I'm talking about the 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. And they're all nervous about the North American Hockey League draft. They participated in some event. They were given attention by a NAHL staff member. Maybe it's a coach, assistant coach, a scout, whoever they talk to, general manager, owner. We don't know. I didn't get into that side of things. But there was interest, and now they're wondering, do they get called ahead of time? Do they get called after? How does this actually work? And the answer is yes, you get called. Some teams will interview you ahead of time to see if you're compatible for their teams. Other teams will just wait and call you after they draft you and say, hey, congratulations, we just drafted you. Our main camp is going to be on these days, and we'd love to see you there. Okay, congratulations. So as far as the ages, this is last year's age breakdown. The age breakdown for last year, 99s, 60 players. Okay, remember there's 26 teams last year. 2000s, that's where the majority was at. 2001s, right up there too. But look at the drop-off. 2002, 2003. 2003s, there's only one player drafted. So this year, just scratch a line right across the 99s, and your 2000s are going to be somewhere, similar. There's an extra team in the league, so the numbers will be a little bit higher. But the 2000s will follow the same suit. There'll be a top 3 grouping. Then your 01s and your 02s are going to be the meat of your draft this next year. And your 03s will get a handful. They'll get a dozen or so, maybe 2 dozen tops. Then your 04 class, you're not going to be on the board much, okay? If you're in 04 right now and you're looking at this draft, I'd be highly surprised if it doesn't look that much different than this, that, there's a couple of 04s on there, but not a lot. And why is that? This is an old league. The North American Hockey League is old. Okay, they play an older roster. This is not the USHL that's mandated to have young players. This is an older league. So that's very, very interesting when you're young to hear how much pressure is being put on people in their minds on this draft. So if I'm an 03 or an 04, I'm putting no pressure on myself going into this North American Hockey League draft. The best situation for an 03 or an 04, looking at the North American Hockey League, if the door doesn't open, is to be on a team that has the ability for you to affiliate with the team. And what I mean by affiliate, that's your U18 situation where they've got a good affiliate relationship where you can see that they've built a path. Over the last 3, 4, 5 seasons, there's 3, 4, 5 players that have gotten up and played games with the North American Hockey League team off of that U18 team. Now, not everybody can fit into that situation, but if I have an opportunity to make a choice and I'm looking at all my opportunities and I thought the North American Hockey League door was going to open and I'm an 03 or an 04, and they liked me, they gave me a lot of time and a lot of attention, I want to put myself, if I can, in a situation where that team can still see me and still be able to appreciate what I do, and I want to put myself into a team situation that possibly affiliates, or even if they don't affiliate with that team, there's an affiliate relationship so you can get up and get some games inside of the North American Hockey League. I hope the affiliate thing is understood. 18 teams, and the league has the ability to affiliate so many players, and I don't know the number on that. If you need that number, DM me, I'll send you the number, but I don't have that off the top of my head. But a U18 team can have, there's no limit on how many players from their team goes up, but every NAHL team can affiliate so many players I believe that's before the trade deadline, and those players can actually move up and play and come back and forth. So hopefully that makes sense for you. Let's just talk a little bit about the numbers. Last year, of the drafts, 41% made a team. Okay, I'm going to say that again. 41% of the people drafted ended up playing in the league. I mean, that's when you think about the league and you think about the North American Hockey League, that should tell you something about the draft process. It's well below half that actually make a team when they get drafted. Look at the next stat there. 32%. So it drops off another 10% made the team that they were drafted by. So of that 40%, there's a large percentage of them that don't actually play for the team that they were drafted by. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these drafts. You may be picked up by a team, but there's a good chance A, you're not going to make the team, and B, if you do make the league, you're going to be playing for somebody else. Here's another stat that most people don't think about. 82 players, 19% opted to stay in the BCHL, the USHL, or Europe. In other words, there were players that were in the USHL, they were in the BCHL, or they were playing in Europe, and they opted not to even come to the main camps, opted not to participate. Not uncommon, and that's why this league is such a hard league to draft to. Because you're sandwiched. You've got the USHL is clearly above you. The BCHL is a smaller league, but it's potent. It's got just as much talent. And in many cases, it's a preferable league to the North American Hockey League. I'm not going to get in the dispute on which league's better because there's merits to both. There's great merits to both leagues. But it's still a competitor. So players are leaving to that league or don't want to come back. Then you've got below you have the NCDC, you have Europe, and you have some other options out there for players. Maybe they stay in prep, maybe they stay at Minnesota High School. So you're sandwiched in the North American Hockey League. You have to be able to pull some kids that aren't happy in the USHL, sorry about that, or you have to be able to pull kids from the BCHL, and you also have to find talent from the rest of the CJHL. So you're looking to draw from all different levels. It's a very, very difficult league to actually put a good draft list together. As you can see, 19% of the league that gets drafted just doesn't even show up. So that means 2 out of 10 picks, 1 out of 5, don't even show up if they're drafted. I did that math in my head, by the way. So where do they come thinking? I just answered this question. They come from the USHL. They come from the CJHL. All 10, actually 7 of the 10 CJHL leagues actively participate in the draft. In other words, you're not going to see too many kids out of the Maritime, out of the CJHL. You may see some kids out of Quebec in this draft, but they're not a lot. There is a little bit. And you rarely see a SIJHL, a Superior International kid, come out into the North American Hockey League draft. But the rest of them, the other 7 of the 10 are active participants in the CJHL. And if you haven't figured out what the CJHL is, I've talked about it a lot. I've got a video on it. I talk literally on a video. It's good to grab. I'll make sure I pin it up on the board today. I've used it a lot, but it's the NAHL secret weapon, and it talks literally about the CJHL's role and the importance it has to the North American Hockey League. Because a lot of players use the CJHL, and you can see that in this draft. You'll watch that in this draft. You'll see those players coming from the CJHL into Americans and Canadians into the North American Hockey League. So they come from Minnesota High School after they graduated, and the league is great at pulling up Tier 1 elite players. The USHL has a good relationship. The North American Hockey League has a great relationship with the Tier 1 elite. So the players that reported to main camp, I've already covered this, is your veterans, your tenders, your draft. Didn't really get into invitees. What's an invitee? It's somebody the coach didn't draft, that sent him an email, and the coach says, sure, you can come to camp. It's a kid that calls at the last minute that gets cut from the BCHL. And this year, what our situation is, and this is really going to be what's important. What happens if there's a lot of these players that are American players, and we get about 125 that usually go to the BCHL? What happens if they say, I don't want to wait till December. I can't wait till December. I want to play now. Okay, it's almost as devastating to the BCHL in a way. It's glad to see they're up and running, but it could be a big impact because those players will trail to the USHL into the North American Hockey League. So we could see a mass influx of player because right now it looks like it's going to be tougher for an American to play up in Canada than it is going to be for a Canadian to come down here. I think the last I was talking, the Canadians that come down have to actually go back into quarantine when they come back. But right now, U.S. players aren't able to go up to Canada at all right now. So that gives you a little bit about the invitees. So here's some just numbers to think about. 68% of the top players in the league are not drafted. Okay, let that sink in a little bit. 68% are not drafted. And why did I say of the top players? Because what I did was I literally took the top 8 teams and just looked at them first, and then I sampled the other teams down. But this is extremely important for you to know. Veterans and tenders and free agents. And what do I mean by a free agent? A kid could come into this league in September that was in the USHL, that was in the BCHL, and was released and had the ability to just go anywhere he wants to go. Somebody could be coming out of the NCDC. Somebody could be coming back, and this happens at the USHL level more, but somebody could be coming back from college and want to continue playing juniors because they still have junior eligibility and things didn't really work. And then half of the teams kept 2 or less draft picks. Think about that. So this draft, half the teams, 13 teams, kept 2 or less draft picks on their roster. So that's got to be very, very important when you're thinking about this process. So last year's draft, teams with 5 or more draft picks with players on the roster. Okay, so if you look at that list right off the bat, there should be something that springs out right away. If you don't know the league and you don't know the league very well, you can look at this and may not get as much out of this. If you know the league, you'll look at this and go, Maine, new team. Maryland, new team. Springfield, not a new team, but New Mexico, brand new team. Okay, so you've got 3 teams right away with a lot of draft picks. Now, what's interesting is Lone Star was one of the best teams in the league last year and still has they've got a machine there. It's a little bit different. So you got one top team, and then the other 4 teams are on the bottom of the league. So they get higher draft picks, so you would assume, because you've got higher draft picks, that you're going to actually get players that will stay on your roster. But the other side of it is, juxtapose that to Lone Star. Lone Star has got it figured out a little bit, because this isn't the first year where they've had a lot of draft picks that actually make the team and stay. They've kind of found that sweet spot. Remember, this is a tough league to draft to. But if you've got pipelines and you've got U18 coaches that trust you, if you've got a Tier 3 program that works for you, if you've got good connections with advisors, all this stuff, in Minnesota high school, coaches that trust you. So when all those things come together, you get situations like that where Lone Star is able to put 5 players that were drafted into their roster. Now, the other ones, you got to expect a brand new program to have draft picks and be playing draft picks. That's the way it is. That's the way it's got to be. When you're brand new, you're looking to fill the roster up, and it's going to be that way a little bit. But let's look at this next number. Here's teams with 1 drafted player on the roster. Brookings, Bismarck, Minnesota Magicians, Fairbanks, and Jamestown. There are teams out there, and this is, once again, I already made the point. The magic number of 2 is half the league. You've got actual teams now that have 1 on their roster. So here's the actual roster. I know this is a little bit convoluted, but don't play the color game with me and don't worry about it. So here's your 4 divisions of the North American Hockey League. Red is the top team in each division. Green is the second place team in each division, or a team with multiple numbers. Now, blue is usually the least amount. So let's just take that first division. This was done, let's say February. I put this together. So all of these programs have added numbers. They've all added college commitments. The number on that is your draft commitment. So when we're looking at each division, the red is always the first place team. Look, in every division, the team with the most college commitments is in first place. Okay, it doesn't matter which division you look at, that's the way it works. And usually it's a descending order, and this is why when you say where you play matters, it absolutely does. Now, I think there's been a lot more arrows added with more players committed, because I think in that East Division we've got more. I know Wilkes-Barre put some good numbers up towards the end, and I know that Jamestown had at least 1. I believe Maine did too. But remember, this is a couple months old. The only reason I show you this is I want you to see that there's numbers of the draft picks are incredibly high in this league. And if anybody tells you that this league does not put out Division I talent, it is absolutely crazy. This league is very, very good at putting out talent. So this one's a little bit tougher. And bear with me a little bit, because this is actually a draft efficiency log. And now this is the top teams in the league and the very last team in the league. And the last place team is Odessa this year. So you've got Lone Star, Amarillo, Fairbanks, Aberdeen, New Jersey, Topeka, Johnstown, Shreveport, and then your last place team, Odessa. The first number you're looking there is your actual, hey, South Dakota, how you doing? Thanks for coming on. The first number you're looking at there is actually the amount of picks they got that year. Now, remember, your number can be lower because if you have a lot of veterans returning and you've got a lot of tenders, your number of draft picks or draft rounds that you participate in are low. So there's your number at first. Then your players retained is your second number. First of all, you've got a 50% efficiency rating right off the bat with Lone Star. They had 10 picks. They had 5 kids stay. That's amazing. Now compare that to the rest of the top teams in the league. The rest of the top teams, anything from 10%, that's Odessa, that's the last place team, but most of them are 20-25%, with the exception being New Jersey. They had 9 picks and 4 of them stayed. They got a 44%. So that's incredibly good. If you're at 25% or higher, you're doing really good on your efficiency in this league. So if you're at the 35, 45, or 50%, you're knocking the ball out of the park on this. So the next is the total amount of points by retained players. So now here's where the real interesting number comes into play. Look at the point production that Lone Star is getting with their 5 players. Now, of course, the number's higher. They got 5, but they've got 103 points coming out of those players versus Fairbanks State, yeah, they got a player to stay, but they had 7 points out of him. Okay, now that could have been a defenseman. Hell, it could have been a goalie. I don't know. But the point of the matter is that your point production by your retained draft players is important because every year there's a threshold number of total goals, total assists, total points that it takes to be a top team in the league. You can go back and figure out the analytics on it, and it's a huge part of the equation. If I'm going to take these guys, can they develop and produce so that I can, as a team, my overall team number be high enough to be a competitive team? Okay, now juxtapose, I'm going to use that word twice tonight. That's not good. I don't want to use big words that I had to look up before the show. I don't want to use them twice in one show. Okay, Odessa. They only had one of their picks stay, and that's at 10%. But once again, if you're getting no production out of that player, that's not going to help you. So the bottom line on this, look at this, and I'll get out of the way here a little bit so that you can see the rest of this. Percentage of total team points from retained draft picks. Now, here's the number that's really, really important. Look at the amount of percentage of total points that your top teams are getting. You know, you're getting 19% on the top. Almost 20% of your points are coming from your new guys out of 5 players that were drafted. That's incredible. That's a great number. Now, remember, draft picks are not necessarily rookies, okay? Draft picks don't have to be rookies. A draft pick could be coming, once again, from the BCHL. It could be coming from any of the CJHL teams. It could be coming from the NCDC, or he might be considered a rookie if he's coming from a Tier 3 team. So I hope this draft efficiency sheet worked. Give me some comments on that. Is there anything that's not clear on this? Is there anything you need to know about the actual sheet here? And this is the draft efficiency. I didn't do the whole league, just gave you the top 8, and then I also gave you the bottom team so you can kind of get a look at those numbers. So anybody out there want any more information on that? Okay, I'm going to move forward. Okay, so once again, Origins. This is just to let you know how the draft works. We're not on the draft efficiency anymore. We're just on Origins. Tier 1 Elite, you can see as a percentage of the draft, 35%. Other midget is 15%. And that's the NAPHL. It puts up high numbers. The North American Prospects League, U18, that gets high numbers. Prep school kids coming in, that's not so high. That's only 6, but it does make up a little bit. Europe, I don't think you're going to see high numbers from Europe this year. Minnesota High School, these are kids that have graduated. Michigan High School, there's a few programs out of Michigan that are pipeline schools. There's some pockets in Michigan that do a great job. Michigan overall is not a hotbed for high school hockey. They have great rivalries, but they're not deep. But there are a few schools in the Detroit area that are just monsters. One school up in the Flint area, Powers, is a sometimes up and down, but has been a monster in the past. And then Canadian Midget. But the reason why these you're seeing these Origins, these are not including your CJHL kids coming over, but you can see where they're coming at as far as the U18 level kid. Okay, I'll talk about that. Thanks for bringing that up, Jay, talking about the timeline for goalies. Let's just crack into that right now. Timeline for goalies. This is probably the area that is the NAHL usually stays the oldest in, and justifiably so. There's no reason for them to be young. And think about it this way: why do you? Let's talk about it in general terms. Why don't you see a D3 team with a true freshman across D3 hockey? Why won't you see a kid that's U18 go into D3? Because D3 schools don't have to take an 18-year-old. Okay, they don't have to take them at any position, and that's why they don't, because they have picks that they're at 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. If I've got the choice between two things that are all equal, and one's 22 and one's 18, one is just learning how to do the twist off top. The other one's probably had enough hangovers that he doesn't have to worry about it, and I can trust that he's just going to focus on his books. I kid, Mom. I kid. That's not the way it is. Every one of these kids are being good kids all the time, and I truly believe that. All right? So getting back to Jay's question, goalies in the North American Hockey League, yes, talent speaks. but veteran talent speaks loads higher. You're not getting as many rookies coming through the draft. You can break through and look at this. Once again, is it better to be the third goalie or a second goalie in a North American Hockey League situation and get limited time? Or is it better to be on a strong U18 team and knock it out of the park and then step into a team as an older player? Or is it better to come out of U18 and go play in any of the CJ programs or on a strong North American NA3 team, potentially even playing in the EHL, and then develop and move out that way? I can't tell you, Jay, that there's a situation where it is lights out, consistent, where young players break into the league at the goalie position. There are some teams and there are some situations where they'll take a younger goalie, but for the most part, you look at any of the success over the last few years, and at the end here, you'll see the most success at the end of the slideshow was Amarillo and what Amarillo did in the veteran status that they've got. So I hope that answers a little bit of what you're looking for, Jay. It's not a situation where statistically, now the statistics go so far. If I can tell you right now, and you've probably experienced it too, many of you out there that are coaches, you know as well as I do, if there's a lightning position that can turn on a dime, it's the goalie position. And that goes both ways. It cuts both ways. But on the positive side, I've watched NHL guys in the stands scouting somebody and go, after one flurry of shots on net, go, I want that guy. I like that guy. I want that guy. I want him on my team. And it's like the defenseman they've been watching for 3 years. The forward, they've watched him for 44 games. And the goalie has a flurry and they've never seen him before, and all of a sudden they want him. That position has this lightning effect on people where they can make instant calls on them. But just in the same token, with the goalie position, you can have the same effect on the other side. Once it sours, some coaches sour it, boom, it doesn't matter. You don't have the time to work your way out of it like you do other positions. But statistically speaking, it's an older league across the board. It's an older league across the board. I think I looked at the top 10 picks, top 26 picks in the league this year. I believe, let me pull that sheet up for you. Of the 26, there was about 4 or 5 goalies. They were drafted last year into the North American Hockey League. And of the goalies that were taken, I'm seeing mostly 00s and 99, 00, and 01. So once again, older kids. Hopefully that helps a little bit, Jay. I wish I could get into a little bit more, but I'm trying to keep this a little bit on topic tonight as much as I possibly can. Since each NA team needs to draft an NA3 player, I was going to get to that. We'll get to that in a second. Don't steal my thunder on the NA3 here. I want to get first to the best draft class from last year. Whoops. I'm not even going to try to find that back. I'm just going to jump screens. But Amarillo had the best draft last year. They had 2 players, and 2 players that were top 15, top 20 in the league last year. I'll make sure that I'll post those names, but I'm still learning my system, so I'm not going to try to pick that up. So the question came up is, what happens because in the North American Hockey League, there's a mandate. Last year, there was 26 teams. I got to take that down with St. Thomas. You don't want to see St. Thomas up there. There you go. There's 26 teams. There were 26 players drafted from the NA3HL. There wasn't 27. There wasn't 28. There wasn't 30. There wasn't 25. Each team's mandated to pick one player from the North American 3 League, and they all do. They all comply. What does that mean? Just look at rosters and look at the statistics and look at where those kids were picked. It's very, very difficult to make it from the NA3. You'll get some kids that can move up during the season, and that seems to be, now, statistically a little bit more advantageous that if you start off with an NA3 team, build your confidence and get your chance with an NA squad, that you actually do better than if you start off right off the bat. But if you're going into main camp as the draft pick, bust your butt, work your butt off, learn as much as you can, and take that information back and make you a better player at the NA3 level. There are very few players at single-digit numbers that will actually make the NAHL out of the NA3HL. That's just, it's a good, in theory, it's a great idea. We've got a Tier 3 league and then we're going to use that Tier 3 league to develop players for our Tier 1 or our Tier 2 league, our top team. And some really try hard. There's organizations out there that put a lot of effort into building a system that should work. The problem is that Tier 3 is more than a step down, in general terms, more than a step down from Tier 2. It's a step and a half, it's 2 steps down, and depending on what team you're on, it could be 3 steps down. And the reason you can say that is, once again, go to the statistics. How many players are being developed that are Division I players playing on Tier 3 teams? None. Okay, if half of your roster on an NA3 is already committed, what does that mean about the other half? That other half is getting close to getting committed, and maybe they're 1 year, 2 years away. So when you see those stats that I showed you on that sheet that shows you how many draft picks are there, those are kids that have already committed. Okay, it doesn't mean that the other half of the roster isn't going to commit. That means they might be young and they might be committing. And to tell you the truth, there's programs out there right now that are still working on finalizing a roster for the fall. Okay, Long Island's nowhere near being done. Alabama, Huntsville has to restructure because they lost a ton of players when they were announced as not coming back as a D1 school. They lost players. So they lost their graduating class. They lost I think they lost 5 or 6 players total. And this is a new coach. The new coach might decide that the talent he has isn't good enough. He might not invite a few kids back. They're in a complete rebuilding. They're still looking for bodies for the fall. Now you've got Long Island out there looking for bodies. You've got Alabama, Huntsville. Plus you got all these other schools. And St. Thomas now has to start, grabbing kids for 1 year away from now. So there is no end to the process. If you go, you can look at collegehockeyinc.com. Look at collegehockeyinc.com. And if you go to collegehockeyinc.com, you'll see right away that the process of finalizing recruiting, there's no month off. It averages, well, now we're adding teams, it's going to change. It used to average just over 30 per month all year long. We just saw a continuous feeding of the Division I commits. Now you add a team or two and the numbers are going to skew. Obviously, it's going to skew your numbers up by 50 or 60 kids on an annual basis. So the bottom line, though, is what does it mean since those players have to be picked? It doesn't really mean much. It doesn't mean much. They're not going to affect the league much. And I hate to say that because I'd love to say that the Tier 3 kids – now, there are Tier 3 kids that are drafted. There are Tier 3 kids that are coming in from the EHL. They're coming in from the USPHL, NCDC. They're coming in from all different areas. And even the CJHL, there's lots of junior kids that are going to be coming in. But I'm actually talking about that drafted number that comes from the league number. So hope that helps. I'm seeing if there's any other questions I can get to. A lot of people are still joining in. Glad to see you're coming on board. Thank you so much for participating tonight. Let's see what else we got to do. I got to do one mail question from viewer mail, and then I think that's about it from here. Okay, I had to use that. I just had to do it. We worked on it today. I figured out how to do it. It's my transition into mail. So here's our mail question for today. Our mail question for today is travel versus high school in non-traditional markets. So to be a little more specific, I'm in a non-traditional market, meaning I'm not in the Bostons. I'm not in the Chicagos. I'm not in the Detroits. Heck, I'm not in the Colorados. I'm sitting somewhere else, mostly west, northwest, maybe south. The Floridas, Arizona, Texas, California. Maybe not so much California anymore. But I'm in a market that's non-traditional. Let's just use that phrase. And I've got a choice between playing on my high school team, which is most likely club, because that's what most of those markets are playing is club hockey. I don't know of many formalized leagues that are in the northwest, west, or southwest, or southeast. So if we're going to play club hockey versus playing travel, what are the benefits of both? Well, even if you're in a good hockey market, we're not talking about Minnesota. Set Minnesota aside. Minnesota high school is in a different world. But if I'm in Wisconsin, I'm in Michigan, or I'm in Massachusetts, remember, there's only pockets of good hockey. Pockets. So when I go to the state championships at Michigan, if I go to New York, who's got unbelievably just a huge amount of real varsity hockey teams. I can go to the state championships and see 2 D3 coaches total. 2. I can see a couple Tier 3 junior programs, and that's it. Unless there's some phenom there that's playing as a sophomore, and maybe that doesn't even draw any attention. But they're just not drawing numbers of people to watch at the high school level. Now, there could be specific teams in Michigan or New York or specific teams that draw attention. I'm just talking about in general. You're not going to see the numbers. At the club level, you have to think about what your intent is. And this is why you work backwards. If I'm playing in New Mexico, if I'm playing in Utah, and my choice is AA hockey or my choice is a high school club team, I have to say what gets me exposed or what gets me closer to where I want to go. If I'm playing AA and I'm going into high school, chances are I'm not on that D1 track right now, okay? And there's nobody in the high school club that's on that track either. So my options move down to possibly moderate to low-level D3 programs is an outlier for my opportunities, and then ACHA College Club being much more of a development path for me. And then it's just working back and saying, if I'm going to play ACHA Club, which one gives me the better path? Then it comes down to reputation, it comes down to coaches, and it comes down to contacts. You remember, it doesn't matter what level you're playing at. The game is always played the same way. And what do I mean by that? You are your marketer, okay? You are your marketing department, you're your advertising department, and you're the one that's building the connections. You are also your chief negotiator. You're also the chief contract signer. All those things comes from your family unit. And what I mean by that is it doesn't matter if ACHA Club Division III is your level of play. You got to work to hustle, to find coaches, find connections, and start talking to people to make sure that you're opening the door. Great. If you're good enough to be an ACHA Division II player, that's awesome. If you can move up to the Division I level, that's great too. But you've got to market yourself and you've got to be out there putting your name out. So if I'm looking at a non-traditional market and I'm trying to make my mind up between high school and travel, if I've got a Tier 1 opportunity in travel, it's no-brainer, lights out. I want to play Tier 1, and the reason is because there is exposure. More ACHA programs are going to be watching. Other U18 programs will be watching. Doors to juniors will open. If I'm playing club hockey, I probably am not going to get the same kind of exposure at any level that I would be getting at a youth travel program. Now, there's always exceptions, and there's always a great club coach that can work wonders. I've ran across them before, but I'm not talking about the anomaly. I'm talking about the statistical path to move forward. If I'm going to do things, I'm always looking from where I could eventually end up, my end goal, and working backwards, and then figure out how do I get to the next step from there. Okay, I can't go, I want to be a D1 player, and what are my choices? My choices are high school or travel hockey. No, I got to be saying, if I play on this travel team, where can that get me from here? Okay, if that can get me from AA to AAA, which is Tier 2 to Tier 1, that's awesome. That's the route I want to take. That's the way I want to move up. So I hope that really answers the question. I know I didn't get into it in a lot of detail, but that is just the way it is right now because I got a lot of stuff I'm trying to, whole notebook here of really, really important stuff that I got to cover. So I showed you the fish. Okay, got that off there. I showed you the pirated tape from the BCHL. Got that off my list. Okay, so I got everything off the list. So, all right, listen, please interact with me. I'll take one more question here. Since, already got that one. I already answered that one. So I'm going to call it quits for the night. I hope everybody enjoyed tonight. Do me a favor. Please let me know if you're enjoying these. Please invite somebody. We're trying to grow our whole community. So if you're part of the discussion group, please let somebody else know about the discussion group. If you're part of the Facebook page, please invite somebody. If you didn't like it, invite 2 or 3 people you don't like. I don't care. Just get the numbers up for me. I need numbers. I want this audience to get bigger. Okay, we're trying to use unbiased sources right now for everything we're doing. I consider myself to be an unbiased source of information for you. I'm trying to stay right down the middle. I don't play sides on any league. I'll tell you the facts the way they are. Use this information to grow. If you're interested in the industry professional class, I got to show you this. Ta-da! That's our Chaos to Commit. I got to get the other thing off the screen. That's our Chaos to Commit professional version. That's what you look for on our website. Click on that. You'll see the whole itinerary for the class, all the schedule. We'd love to see you jump on that class if you want. You can always DM me if you want to talk about that class. And I'd love to see you get involved with the industry professional class if you're looking to make a career out of this. Once again, thank you, everybody, for paying attention for this long. I know that even my wife won't listen to me for this much time, so I appreciate it. Have a great night. We'll see you later.